What's up everyone, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for another episode of Rank, the series where I take a band or an artist, take a closer look at their discography, and then rank all of their studio albums only, not greatest hits, EPs, or B-sides or anything like that. All studio albums ranked from worst to best. Today we're going to be taking a look at the heavy, new, and alternative metal band hailing from Iowa, Slipknot, and I'll be ranking all 6 of their studio albums. I've always held a special place for Slipknot in my heart because they got me into heavier, harder, faster-leaning music. Of them, alongside the likes of System of a Down and Metallica, were early introductions for me. Shout out to my boy Coleman back in like the 7th grade for showing me all those bands after school. The good thing for me about ranking Slipknot's discography is that I don't outright dislike any of their albums, which makes it easier to talk about because I know some of the fans are already gonna have my throat because I'm not a real metalhead, which I'm not claiming to be. I don't claim to have a vast, extensive knowledge of every band out there. I just have the ones that I happen to gravitate towards, and sure, I'd be open to more suggestions, but again, Slipknot were one of my early loves, and I'm excited about doing this ranking. I'm also going to be dropping a top 10 Slipknot songs very soon, so if you happen to be new to the channel, then please subscribe, join the neighborhood, drop a like on this video while you're here, and let's start ranking all 6 of these Slipknot records. With the firing of longtime drummer Joey Jordison and the untimely death of bassist Paul Gray, who quite literally impacted this album in an obvious way, Slipknot took their longest break between albums before dropping .5 The Gray Chapter in 2014. When I started planning this video, I told myself that this album wouldn't end up at number 6, but here we are with The Gray Chapter somehow landing at the bottom of the totem pole. You know, that must be saying something about the quality of Slipknot's music over the years, because this won't at all be a total panning of this record, even if my feelings towards it aren't nearly as positive as they were in 2014. The Gray Chapter was the rebound album that saw the band proving to themselves once again that they could do this, even after losing 2 key members. There's still some great introspective songwriting on a handful of cuts, while plenty of others ramp up the anger in an infectious way. Even still, there's just something that feels a little bit more hollow about this full length when you stack it up next to the rest of their discography. I don't feel that the album gains that much momentum until track 4, the single The Devil and I. It's definitely dark and foreboding, but it plays around with atmosphere in a really engaging way that makes it stand out from the songs surrounding it. Custer heats up and pours out a chant that feels pulled from the depths of hell, and the negative one puts turntable scratching plus some of Corey Taylor's best vocals on the record to good use, remaining a standout to this day. All in all, this album is simply just more forgettable. And even though the band members might show a lot more of their skills or technical proficiency on this compared to some of their early records, I still remember the songs from those albums in a more pronounced way. Maybe we all got caught up on the hype train after 6 years of waiting for the record, or maybe I'm in the minority in saying that this is their worst album. I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments section one way or the other. I'm by no means a metalhead, but I know some pure classic metal influences on a record when I hear it. The band had pretty much pounded and growled their way through as much nu metal territory as they could stand, so instead of forcing something for album 4, they pivoted towards more of a groove metal sound that suited the Iowa-based band pretty well. Here's the thing with All Hope Is Gone though. While some of the juggernauts like Gematria and Psychosocial roar their way to the top with some fierce screams, godly backing vocals, and insane percussion matched to socially conscious lyrics, not all of the songs fared as well. I'd argue that the band danced with the mainstream rock scene in a major way on a few too many of these cuts, and while I do have a lot of love for, say, something like Sulfur, I think I've heard Dead Memories one too many times to feel like there's any magic left in that potion. Dedicating yourself to a new sound that doesn't betray your roots is definitely applause-worthy. Not trying to pull the rug out from under them on that, but a lot of the instrumental passages fall into more bland territory the further into the album we get, with the second half in particular containing songs that do very little to make themselves sound distinct enough for the Slipknot name. Emotions do run high on All Hope Is Gone though, and you'd have to be a monster to deny the obvious pain felt on many of Corey Taylor's vocals and lyrics, with one of the most obvious selections being Snuff. Some people can't stand it for whatever reason, maybe the vocals, but I personally love the slower, more human elements that Slipknot are able to bring to the table. More politically motivated lyrics pop up on this album too, hitting even harder because of the creativity of the other numbers. Members, the creativity that the members possess. Some call it the best nu metal has to offer, some call it late 90s cringe. I call it an exemplary deep dive into harnessing the harsh anger life inspires over some of the better nu metal stylings you're gonna hear. But that comes with an asterisk, because it's probably a 50-50 shot as to whether or not you'd think it's dumb if you didn't actually grow up listening to music like this. Examining these tracks 2 decades after their release reveals a formula that worked really well for Slipknot in their early years. They'd been a band for a while already at this point, fine-tuning their lineup behind the scenes before releasing their debut album in 1999. From there, they showed off a shock factor that had no mom in the world wanting their child listening due to, number 1, their crazy masks and perceived violent image, but also 2, a raw musical talent featuring diverse instrumentation with wildly catchy hooks. The maggots of the world, who were as of yet unnamed, came crawling in droves towards this sound, and who could blame them? No Life and Sick pretty much rally up anyone who feels spit on by the jaws of life, and other highlights like Surfacing puncture with some nasty turntables from Sid Wilson and looping riffs that could get even the most mild-mannered kid moshing. Eyeless still sits confidently near the top of the throne with its tattered drums and manic vocals that feature a line that a homeless man in California kept repeating to Corey Taylor. There's plenty of influences from Korn and other groups in the genre on this track and others, but Eyeless does such a great job at balancing aggression with breathing room. There's not necessarily a large amount of songs from the self-titled that I have locked and loaded in my playlists, but some of the treasures I've already mentioned among other top favorites like Wait and Bleed make this album worth coming back to when you're in a tense, angry, or reckless mood. Man, Joey Jordison and Clown tore up the percussion on Iowa. And if you've ever wondered why this record is so goddamn heavy and out of control sounding, it's because everyone in this band was up to their eyeballs in drugs and self-abuse. Paul Gray and Corey Taylor were some of the more affected members, and with Taylor being the primary songwriter, you can just feel the self-hatred dripping from every pore of this bloody bastard of a record. Iowa is without a doubt their heaviest, loudest, and most demented release, but it's also one of the best nu metal records of all time. It's also a heartbreaking release because not only were several of the members on the brink of making horrible mistakes involving self-harm, they also hated the fuck out of each other during the recording process. Even though that's true and extremely sad, the album probably wouldn't exist or else sound the way that it does without those elements. There are some sung choruses throughout Iowa, but more often than not, this album is relentlessly punishing for anyone who dares to listen. My Plague rips out hearts left and right, Skin Ticket rolls on for nearly 7 minutes, chopping up everything in its way, and the Heretic Anthem remains a live staple due to its rallying cry, nasty guitars, and shout-along-worthy 555-666 lines. Lest we neglect Left Behind, we've gotta talk about how throat-grabbing this rager is. Easily one of the best songs they've ever created. It just keeps elevating with its pummeling guitars, vocals, bass, and drums as the song goes on. Slipknot themselves have reflected back on this record in its very dark time negatively, and even though the music can be great and very therapeutic, it can also be a little bit too reckless for some people, so I guess this wouldn't exactly be the starting point that I'd recommend to most fans out there. Aging? What is aging? Slipknot again proved that age is but a number with their exceptional August 2019 release, We Are Not Your Kind, their first record after quite another long break in between albums. After the one-off single All Out Life on Halloween 2018 that proved to fans that Slipknot season was indeed upon us, we got the official lead single Unsainted the following spring. And you know what? It was glorious, unique, tenacious, and very much still the Slipknot we love. It's their most critically acclaimed album to date, which is killer but surprising to me, but I totally do get behind the hype. Ask me again in 10 years, and this might just be my favorite Slipknot album. Nero Forte instantly caught on with its kick you in the teeth and burn the whole house down mentality, and the ghostly lead into that, Death Because of Death, is one of the most ominous interludes I've heard. Orphan sears a rage-filled burn on the ear with some of Taylor's most cathartic vocals on the record, and the sinister Birth of the Cruel sounds like something straight out of the best parts of the 2000s music scene. Unfortunately, there's so many good songs on the record, I know, first world problems, but I do think that some of the standouts are gonna get overlooked. Red Flag harkens back to their heaviest music they've ever created, Spiders is ripe for a haunted house soundtrack because it's incredibly unnerving, and Critical Darling howls on for over 6 minutes without ever overstepping what it set out to do. Solway Firth is one of those giants that simply drops your jaw when you think of all the elements that go into making it such an untamed beast. Prepare to be dropkicked, but also prepare to love the pain. Even though the end of the road for Slipknot, or at the very least Corey Taylor in Slipknot, may be closer than we'd ever like to imagine, I'm hopeful that their creative endeavors here will encourage them to push even further for at least one more album before that sad day arrives. All the right itches get scratched for rock, metal, and fans of a more experimental, open Slipknot on Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses. With this being one of my primary introductions to the group, I'm sure that nostalgia plays a part in this landing at the top, but after multiple listens through their entire studio album discography in the weeks leading up to this video, Volume 3 presented itself as the chart topper for multiple reasons. For the first time ever, Slipknot started to push the boundaries of what they could do as a band. It's very much still a nu metal record at its core, but with a more expansive reach in terms of its vocals, instruments used, and the inclusion of some of the bombastic guitar solos as heard on the Headbangers Before I Forget and Pulse of the Maggots, the latter of those which has some of my favorite guitar work from Jim and Mick to date. Hardcore fans viewed this record as a sellout, which definitely sucks, but for many people like myself, this was a starting point that got us to dig deeper in the well of Slipknot. Before I Forget was my first ever Slipknot song, and I still love the hell out of it with its unmistakable chorus and furious guitars. Vermillion Parts 1 and 2 are really thought-provoking and sad in a way, as Taylor stated he only saw the color red when the idea of the two-part song was presented to him, hence the title Vermillion. It experiments with the idea of how words hit the ear differently when they're delivered with a unique vocal style and they're sung and presented in a different way, and it's insane to think about how different they are musically for having almost identical lyrics. In addition to Vermillion Part 2, I would say that Circle also quenches the craving for a slower Slipknot tune, although it certainly brings up the intensity in its final half. The Blister Exists still fucking rips, Duality is remembered so positively for a reason as the song is legendary, and of course other gems like Opium of the People and especially the Nameless prove that this Iowa crew can tear through multiple genres and spit them out like it's nothing. That's gonna be a wrap on my thoughts on all 6 of the studio albums released by the Iowa-based metal band Slipknot as of 2019. Let me know your thoughts on how I ranked the albums in the comments section down below, and of course feel free to share your list down there as well. I'll like and reply to as many of those comments as I can, start the discussion, and by the way, if you could do me a favor, drop a like on this video because Ranked is a much more difficult series to make, and a like really does go a long way. If you're new here and want to see more videos like this, including my top 10 Slipknot video, which is on the way, then tap that subscribe button and join the neighborhood. Other than that, if you want to see another Slipknot review, tap this card here, or tap over here for another rock review. All of my socials can be found in the description down below, and I'll see you soon for more right here on ARTV.